Welcome everybody to our fall symposium for the VSTMA. It is October the 14th, and I'm glad everybody could be here this afternoon. We got a good selection of panelists to go over some topics regarding the pandemic and how people are dealing in their own environment with their staff and getting the job done. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Crane. I'm going to be the moderator today, and I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. Deeply rooted in the turf industry. That's where I cut my teeth and actually served as a superintendent in the golf industry, and then helped to solve people's issues with equipment and needs through the turf industry. And I am still deeply rooted and connected with about 18 and a half years of experience serving that community. So right now I would like to introduce our panelists. We have three panelists today who are going to be active in the questions that we have, and we also have a support panelist that I'm going to introduce to you guys. But our first panelist is Allison Moyer. She has served on the VSTMA board. She is actively currently serving on the VTF. She's a graduate of Virginia Tech and has a double major in crop and environmental science with a focus on turf management and horticulture. She has over 15 years experience and is currently serving the University of Richmond as the Associate Director of Landscape Services. She manages 350 acres at the University of Richmond, and you can also see that she's currently managing 3 natural sports fields as well as 6 synthetic fields. She has 24 staff members, including herself, 4,000 students at the University of Richmond, and 95% of them live on campus with only 2 reported cases of COVID currently. I have her contact information if you'd like to reach out to her. Our second panelist is Chris Hoover, who serves at Stafford County Parks and Rec. He's a supervisor of one of their districts. He has 12 years experience and is a graduate of Penn State University. He's responsible for 60 acres of maintained turf, 12 staff members, and he has a budget of $650,000. Currently, there's no cases present in his staff or that he knows of in the Stafford County Parks and Rec Department. And the next person is Drew Miller, who we're proud to have from Northern Virginia. He serves at Brentsville High School, and he serves as a teaching instructor there for agronomy and turf management. He has over 9 years experience, 5 of which has been in sports turf, 4 in teaching. He has served both the National Football League and the Division I collegiate schools, as well as Major League Baseball. Great experience there, Drew. He is responsible for 14 acres of maintained turf and high school grounds. He utilizes 220 of his volunteers through the high school students there to maintain that turf. And he also has a weekly turf update with the Tiger Turf Talk segment, which he produces and posts that on Wednesdays. And we can get some more information from Drew later on today. There's currently no COVID cases at his high school, and his contact information is there, and we're also going to share that at the end. The last person I'd like to introduce is welcome Dr. Mike Goatley from Virginia Tech. He has over 32 years experience and is well known, as well as he's served as president of the National STMA and is currently a VSTMA board member as our advisor. And he is a graduate of the University of Kentucky and Virginia Tech. So the way I want to lay the ground rules for you guys today is we are going to begin with some pre-planned questions. After we get through those questions today, we want you to feel free to use the chat box on your Zoom call. You can go ahead and type in your questions as we're going along, but we're not going to address those questions until the end. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to start off our first question today. asking our panelists, and we're going to start off with Allison. We would like to ask, with the limited resources you have, how are you prioritizing what gets done in your sports fields, and what responsibilities are you able to let go of? So, Allison?
Hey everybody, I'm Allison. I guess I'll start off on this question. So because at U of R, we don't have any games going on this fall, it's practice only. So no games on campus or away from campus. So with that, we are able to not have to paint lines as much. That's one of the big things, time-saving things that we are implementing, is not painting lines as fresh, keeping them as fresh on the fields as what we do when they're having games. The team's fine with faded lines, so that helps us. And we're also not painting the logos on the fields right now. Obviously, if we're not playing games, there's no point in spending money on paint. So that also helps us with reducing our costs this fall on paint, because as we all know, paint is not cheap. Mr. Connor, I know you're on here. I know he likes to sell us lots of paint, but we are reducing the amount of paint that we are using just by touching up our lines when they get faded, not keeping them bright all the time. So that's kind of what we're doing, how we're making the best of what we have on our limited resources.
So, Chris, what are you doing out at Stafford County to prioritize what you get done and making those decisions on what you have to let go of?
So when the fields were closed before July 1st, the only maintenance we were really doing to the fields at that time was mowing them at least once or twice a week, depending on the growing conditions, doing some trimming and grooming the fields every so often to keep weeds from growing in the infields. After the fields opened back up, July 1st, the most important thing that we focus on is safety. So we were continuously inspecting and monitoring field conditions, making sure there are no lips on the transitions on the baseball fields, and making sure all surfaces have an even playing surface and performing maintenance as needed. One thing that we do use in Stafford County is a computer maintenance management software that has made it easier to prioritize what work needs to be done as far as daily maintenance, like the mowing and grooming, as well as keeping track of the time that it takes to complete those tasks. As well as safety on the fields, since we did open July 1st, we are doing our best to keep all visitors at our facility safe, and we've increased the amount of cleaning that we do on all our amenities, like playgrounds, pavilions, water fountains, restrooms, really focusing on like the high touch areas of our parks and spraying those with disinfectants throughout the day as often as we can. Some responsibilities that we were able to let go of were maintenance at our school sites. We have a large amount of soccer fields and several baseball fields that we maintain. So when this started, we stopped maintaining them completely and told the schools that they will go and maintain them the best they can. Most of these school sites are middle schools and elementary schools that lack grooming equipment, so mainly they were only able to mow them. So you can imagine the amount of grass and weeds that eventually grew up through the infields. But we eventually took those back over, and not at as high of a level of maintenance as we would in a normal year, since they're still offline and they're not currently being used.
So appreciate you providing that perspective, Chris, on what you're able to cut back on. Drew, do you have anything you'd like to add in this question and how you prioritize what you got done at your high school?
For sure. So I'm very similar to Allison, where our county has actually been one of the most careful counties, is probably the best word to say there. We didn't have a student on school grounds until, I believe, September 20th, and that's for athletics, and they weren't allowed inside or anything like that. So really we were just keeping up with mowing, like Chris said, when it first started. And again, making sure that we take care of the infield as much as possible with the limited staff we had. Obviously, it was me and my athletic director. And actually, some of our kids, we had about 4 students from our turf cabinet that were allowed by the county on school grounds to help maintain. A lot of things that we think about with limiting and making sure that we save. Our budget kind of went to zero, especially for a high school site. So one of the big things now is it's really, and again, with Prince William County Schools, it's kind of a guessing game because we need to make sure that we're not doing certain aspects like overseeding if we're not going to have a season in the spring. We, again, we're scheduled to have our first football game February, I believe, 15th. So baseball won't start till April, softball won't start till April. So again, we're not going to overseed those fields. So that saves money not only in the seed, but having to spray the fields out later on. Just sort of those ideas behind it. And again, we spent a lot of time, my athletic director, Seth Cameron, we work together well, and we try and make sure that we spend the money that we do have where it needs to be spent. And again, we don't have the machinery that these colleges, and I'm sure Chris has probably a little bit more machinery than us with the district. We usually have to contract deep tying aeration. That kind of went out the window this year. We actually have been top dressing with USGA sand the past few years. We weren't able to do that this summer. And it's just, we sort of used what we had, whether it was a rolling aerator or a drag that we make shifts to try and get the thatch out of the grass, the soil profile, make sure that we have that healthy percolation. But again, there was a lot of stuff that we had to sort of get rid of, unfortunately, because we didn't have the money. So those are sort of my things that we kind of let go of and worked with what we had.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, Drew. And I'm going to throw this next question to you as well, Drew, since you just finished up. Based on your unique situation, what is the biggest challenges you are facing?
I was sort of talking to you guys before. I think our biggest challenge is ahead, honestly, especially in my situation where we haven't had kids on the grounds and we have minimum traffic on our fields. Our football players aren't allowed to put pads on. They're not allowed to be within 6 feet. They're running drills. They're running exercises. I mean, we even have cheerleaders out on our fields. That's how restricted it is in Prince William County. So our biggest challenge really is going to be the spring. We have a time frame where our football schedule runs into our soccer and lacrosse schedule, and my biggest concern right now is the goal mouse for lacrosse and the football teams. If we have like a playoff run where we're going to be hosting games into those lacrosse games, and the compaction and making sure that everything's safe for all the football players, obviously, as well as the lacrosse players. So again, the biggest challenge is going to be I think it's going to be like 3 months where it's going to get beaten up worse than it ever has before. And it'll be interesting to see with what we've done and what we've been able to do, how it holds up. So that's really what I think is our biggest challenge.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. Chris, what do you think your biggest challenge is at Stafford County?
So staffing was one of the biggest challenges we faced in the last several months. In Stafford, we have 6 different maintenance districts. When the coronavirus started, we ended up laying off 29 of those facility maintenance employees that take care of our sports fields and the rest of our park grounds. Now, I lost a total of 6 employees to furlough, and one full-time employee that qualified under the CARES Act because she lost her child care, and she had to stay home and babysit. So I went from maintaining, my maintenance staff went from 3 full-time employees and 13 part-time employees in the beginning of March to just 2 full-time employees, and one of those being myself, and 5 part-time employees. Fortunately, we were able to bring most of those workers back in July when our sports fields opened back up, but not all came back, and some found different employment during their furlough period. And since the county's in a hiring freeze, we weren't able to rehire any new staff members to fill their positions. And it is worth mentioning that these employees don't all work during the day when most of the maintenance needs to be done. Some work at the parks in the evenings to monitor the practices and games that had started back up mid to late summer. So we need to cover shifts from 7 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m. 7 days a week, which is challenging at times, especially when the part-time employees are only allowed to work 28 hours a week. But hopefully the hiring freeze that we are on currently will be lifted in the spring. But staffing was definitely one of the biggest challenges this year.
Wow. Well, Allison, what's going on at University of Richmond?
So I'm going to sound like an echo to Drew and Chris. Staffing is our biggest challenge. We are also on a hiring freeze, and we can fill positions, but you have to put a petition in, and that process is very long and drawn out. So, you can get discouraged very easily. We are 4 positions down right now, and it's just been a challenge. So our biggest challenge also is staffing. The other challenge that we have is HR, because of COVID, is not enforcing any of our absence attendance policy. So we have the problem that some people are taking advantage of the attendance policy of not having to, usually if you're out more than 3 days, you have to have a doctor's note. And if it gets excessive, we can write you up, and that could be a means for termination. Right now, we can't terminate anybody, even if they just don't show up for 2 weeks. And it can be for anything from woke up, for no reason, basically. So staffing has been our biggest challenge by far. We were on a rotating schedule from March through June 15th, and then starting June 15th, we were fully staffed with the staff that we had. So our staff have been back since June 15th, but filling those positions, we have had 4 positions empty. We filled 1, and then we lost somebody else. So we're now still 4 people down. So.
Wow. Well, too bad they can't bring back perfect attendance and give everybody a reward for coming to work, right?
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, that's also the killer, is when HR won't back, you need people there to do stuff, and HR just won't back you up on it. I mean, it's very frustrating.
Well, Allison, you're so good at what you do. I'm going to throw this next question to you. What are you doing differently this fall in preparation for the additional field usage you're going to have in the spring? So are there any cultural practices, drainage, extending the growing season, overseeding? What do you have?
So unlike Drew, we are focusing on overseeding. We see the need for having overseeded fields be extensive this spring, because everybody's going to want to play on an overseeded field. So we are focusing on that. We're doing split seedings to be able, because they are still practicing on the fields. So we have split seeding in effect. And the other thing that we did was we top dressed our main game fields so that we had good seed to soil contact trying to get through the canopy. We have Patriot Bermuda grass. And as you know, that thatch layer gets super thick, and the top dressing, we just are getting a better seed to soil contact. So we did do that this year to make sure we had a solid overseeding take for this next spring season. We'll continue to push that ryegrass. We'll continue to fertilize it while it's still warm to get it well established and ready for play, a lot of play in the spring.
Okay. Chris, what is Stafford County doing out your way as far as doing things differently, and what do you have planned?
We don't really expect to have any additional field usage in the spring, unlike what a lot of colleges and high schools seem to be doing. Our soccer and baseball leagues were able to have a fall season, even though their participation numbers were less than what they normally would have been. So our fields didn't really nearly see the amount of wear and tear on them as they normally would. We have been able to keep up with most of our cultural practices in our parks. I was unable to verticut our Bermuda grass baseball fields this year, but I plan to next year. And there weren't really any additional projects as far as field drainage or any significant repairs made to any fields. The time that we could have done that kind of work was when a large portion of our employees were furloughed, when the fields were closed, and we're being very frugal with our budget and spending. As far as overseeding, Stafford doesn't really overseed any of their fields with Bermuda fields with ryegrass, but we do normally do a big bulk seed and fertilizer order in the fall for our cool season fields. And we did not do that this year to save some money. If we do have any thin areas from the fall sports around goal mouths or midfields, we'll seed those areas specifically and turf blanket them to try to get the areas reestablished for spring play.
Okay. Drew, what are y'all doing out at Brentsville?
So I am sort of mimicking both of them with our game field. So our stadium field, we have overseeded, and we are pushing that because that is going to be where most of that traffic's going to occur. So we have our growth blankets we're going to put out next month when we hit our first frost and everything, and we want to make sure we have a good stand when we come out in February. Um, the reason that we're not overseeding baseball and softball is because they won't get on the field until the end of April. So I think that little gap we can manage the traffic, and that's the other big thing that we've done. And I know Mark Moran is a big preacher on this. Is managing your coaches is a big thing that we're doing. Getting them to understand the difficulties that we're going through right now, and making sure that they are rotating. Luckily, at Brentsville, we have one of the biggest areas when it comes to practice facilities in our county. We're out in the rural part of the county, so we do have extra land, and we make sure that they use every inch of it to make sure that we have the healthiest stand of grass for them for when they're practicing. One thing we did do last year that we sort of pushed in on this year, we do have one practice field. We did a dormant springing trial with Game Day Incorporated with Northbridge Bermuda grass, and we overseeded with bluegrass. So we were trying the blue muta out at Brentsville. It looks pretty good right now for the little input that it's gotten this year. Most of our fields did not get much input, fertilizer and chemical wise. So we're just sort of pushing that, and we're going to see how that goes. And again, it's just managing what you can. We weren't able to top dress or anything like that. And we didn't get any deep tine aeration in there this year. So we beat it up as much as we could with what we had, and we're going to see how it goes in the spring. And again, like Chris said, with managing gold mouse and whatnot, we are going to push with the ryegrass and the growth covers. So.
Well, and without it overseeing those fields, at least it'll give you an opportunity to maybe clean up some weeds that you couldn't do last year. So, all right. So, Drew, since you finished up on that, I'm going to throw this question out to you. What proactive conversations, and it sounds like you already have had with your coaches, but what proactive conversation are you having with the upper management regarding managing their expectations?
So, like I think I said before, Mr. Cameron is the athletic director at my school, and he's really the only upper management that I deal with when it comes to our facilities. And he's working hand in hand with us and our kids and making sure that we put in the work as much as we can and understand the expectations that are going to be realistic. Sorry about that. The big thing is understanding when coming out of it, we don't know where we're going to end up. And that's just the honest truth. We want to do our best to manage what we can, but again, with the high traffic and everything that's going on, we understand that in the back end of this, we're going to need a lot of work done. So he's very understanding. He's always helpful. And we work, I mean, it's every day. Me and him are working together. So I'm very lucky when it comes to upper management. Allison was mentioning HR and all that. We don't deal with HR. Again, I have 220 students. They're kind of it kind of is, I'm in charge of them and they answer to what I'm saying. They don't go to an HR or anything like that. But we try to give them
blessings.
I try to make sure that they have a very good education and they get the best opportunity possible. So hopefully there's no HR calls, you know what I mean?
Always nice to have a few minions, right?
Just a couple hundred. You know?
So, Chris, I'm going to throw this question to you and see what you're doing in Stafford County to communicate to the public as well as your upper management.
So our expectations haven't really changed much. As soon as the athletic fields opened up, people started practicing, not necessarily as full team, but our fields were definitely being used. And we actually had our first tournament here at the end of July with close to 30 teams playing in it. And as I mentioned, our baseball and soccer leagues were able to have a fall season. One thing that the county did require was our user groups to submit a social distancing plan that needed to be approved by our department before they begin any practices or games. It included a limited number of spectators for each family, where the spectators could sit and watch the games. For baseball, the areas around the dugouts were roped off and made bigger to encourage social distancing. Things like that were in the contracts, and they also made the players sign a waiver. We don't anticipate having to do anything differently this coming spring. We won't have multiple seasons being played like at the colleges and some schools. It'll hopefully just be a regular spring season, and hopefully things get back to normal. And I would anticipate that the participation numbers in the spring are lower than years past.
Okay. Allison, what proactive conversations are you having with your upper management?
Yep. So mine's basically with the athletic department. There are our customers, and we're trying to set the expectations now, warning them that, hey, there is going to be weather delays in the early spring. I mean, during that freeze thaw time period, some fields are, especially baseball, softball, it's just too wet to get on some days, and they need to be prepared for that now. But having that open line of communication so that we can stay in touch with the coaches and say, hey, it's not going to happen today. As much as you want it to, it's not going to happen. And it's a safety reason. It's not because we want our field to stay pretty. It's a safety reason. But in saying that, we also have to realize that there's going to be times this spring that the teams are going to get on the fields because they just need to get on the fields because we're trying to cram so much in. So we're having to accept the fact that our fields are going to get worn out faster or more than usual this spring, and that we're going to have to be prepared to push them this summer, goal mouth replacement potentially, push them harder with growing the centers in and that type of thing, because at least at a college level, I mean, you can keep them off a little bit, but if they've got a game, it's going to be tough to keep them off the field at a college level. So they're going to get beaten up, basically. We are here, and that's the thing I have to remind our staff is, yes, we want to have the prettiest fields at all times, but we are here because of the players, and they have to be able to play. So at some point, you just have to throw up your hands and say, play, and then you just have to repair them in the summer. So we're also preparing ourselves and accepting that, hey, they're going to get beaten up a little bit more, and we're going to have to put the work in this summer through aeration, through phrase mowing, through deep tining, verticutting, whatever that is.
Okay. So I wanted to ask this just on a side note. Are any of you guys using like Facebook or social media to communicate to the general public or to communicate to your, I guess, football teams or whatever teams are playing out there?
I'm terrible with social media. I'm a stalker on social media only. I don't post anything on.
You're like my wife.
We put up updates, and luckily I have 2 students who are in charge of our social media, so they love doing that. But again, like when it comes to like things we've done, we put it up. But my athletic director is a little bit more like powerful over those coaches, so it's definitely coming from him more than me. I will say that he is their boss. So,
and in Stafford, we don't really do much on Facebook or social media.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. So, Allison, what are you doing to deal with your hiring freezes and personnel issues? How are you working around that?
It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's been very hard for us. Basically, our team, everybody else has to make up for our open positions right now, which really, really stinks for the rest of the team. It just makes them work that much harder. Finding the spots where we can push the team a little bit further. We've implemented, I mean, I'm talking whole landscape at this point, not just athletic fields, but we've implemented mowing schedules, and we're getting, teams of mowing together, and we're mowing these areas at set designated times to try to push the guys to get more production out of them. But they can't withstand that for so long. So also in that same vein is we're having to set the expectation with our administration, having the conversation with them, letting them know when we're 1 position down, this is what it looks like. When we're 2 positions down, this is what it looks like, and so on, so that we're outlining things that are being prioritized and things that are kind of being put on the back burner. We are making it upfront. Everybody knows, hey, this area, like for example, for us, our frats and sororities aren't in commission this season. Frats and sororities get mowed once a month. And it's just because we don't have the staff to mow right now. We're not doing the hedges around the sororities and the fraternities right now. So it looks a little bit overgrown, but I have outlined all of that to our upper administration, showing them when we are this many positions down, something's got to give. And these are the areas that we have designated out that's going to look a little bit rougher than it usually does. And we are utilizing contractors some. We are having, here at University of Richmond, we have a large number of off-campus properties that the university owns. And we had one person designated just to go out and mow off-campus properties around town. And we've actually pulled that person back on campus, and we're having contractors mow all of our off-campus properties. That was an easy call for us. I mean, contractors are already hooked up to trailers mowing around the city anyways. So we pulled that person back on campus, and now they're helping with the campus landscape. So that's kind of what we've been doing is basically letting our administration know what it looks like when we're that short staffed. Like I said previously, we do have a route that we can go to put a petition in, and it's a whole lot of writing on why you need to fill this position. So we have gone down that path, and we will continue to go down that path. We're trying to fill 2 positions right now. So we are trying to fill some of those positions, but it's a slow process. It's very frustrating.
Well, Chris, what are you having to do with your limited amount of staff, and how are you dealing with it?
We've made it work. As I mentioned before, we had to lay off almost 30 park maintenance staff in the spring and didn't get them back until July, and not all of them came back, which made it a little challenging. But since we do have 6 different maintenance districts, we were able to move some employees around from park to park to assist with the daily maintenance. And it was actually beneficial in a way because some people came from other park districts that don't necessarily have any baseball fields that they get to work on and maintain. So it was a good time to get them some experience on the correct maintenance procedures on how to groom, mow, maintain a baseball field, and even lay out a soccer field to give them that knowledge for the future. But as far as contractors, we haven't used any contractors to take over any jobs that we specifically do in our parks or sports fields. We've been able to keep all that in-house.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you had a silver lining there through all this, that you're cross-training some people.
Yep.
Be more versatile. So, Drew, I got your picture of your minions down here. These are a few of them. So share with me what you're doing to work through this. And
so it's been a weird couple months, especially when school started back up. I don't think I've said this yet. We're in a virtual state of learning, and with that, I am on I'm on Zoom from 7:30 until 3 p.m. And then I will have time to go over to my fields and work on them. When we first started, it was just me and my athletic director and we actually take care of the school's grounds next to it. So all the school grounds and all the athletic fields, it was just when the Bermuda was waking up in the spring. So we had to catch up with all of that. About a month into it, we got the okay to have about 4 students at most come in. But still to this day, we don't have all of our students back or even half our students back. We did get good news the other day. We are going to be having 1 day a week, 2 sessions for 3 hours. So we'll have some students on campus for that, which is awesome. Because again, the reason we do it is to give them the opportunity to learn and have fun with turf grass, I did mention before that we do contract out different things that we haven't been able to do with the budget shortage. But like I tell my kids, you deal with what you got and make sure you give it all you got. So make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure that playability of the fields are safe and healthy for all of our athletes when they finally do get to come back in. So yeah, that's how we've been dealing with our hiring freezes.
okay. So I'm going to throw this question to you again, Drew. What plans have you made to protect yourself and the minions that you have from burnout? Are you doing anything to boost your morale as well as your staff and family?
Me personally, no. I'm not. I'm trying to do as much as I can with the time that I have. I get to spend a lot of time with my family. I'm from around where I live, so again, uh, I'm doing okay with that. With my students, it's honestly a little different. It's trying to keep them engaged on a Zoom call instead of actually being out there hands on, which is what I'm working on morale wise, and really just keeping their heads up and waiting for that day when they get the call back to come back in. So, um, personally, I make sure that my weekends try and stay as free as possible. That's pretty much the main thing that I have because, like I said, we usually go in after school ends at 3 p.m. and we're there till the sun goes down to do as much as we can. And lately, it's been more of a every other day type basis. But Mondays we do have it's called asynchronous. We don't actually are not on Zoom all day, so we use those days during the day. So usually in the afternoon, there's some time where I can get home, relax, and try and figure out a couple other things. I'm actually taking classes as well, so I really am not doing a good job of trying to just keep my own self from burning out. So other than that, that's pretty much what we're doing.
So, Chris, what plans do you have for you and your family? And I know you got a newlywed bride, so how's everything going up your way, and what are you doing to prepare for a busy season?
So with staff, I think it's important every now and then, I guess, talk to them on a more personable level and leave work out of it, like asking how their family's doing, if they had a good weekend, what they did over the weekend, things like that to help show your employees that you care more than just about them getting their job done. I also like to share any positive feedback I get with them whenever I can. We frequently get compliments after tournaments or even during tournaments from coaches or parents saying that they appreciate all the work that we do, or your staff has done. And, you know, it helps the employees feel the rewards of their hard work. I think the hardest time throughout all of this for our employees, for employee burnout, even with myself, was when everything inside our parks were shut down from baseball fields to playgrounds and restrooms, and getting staff to remain positive and boosting their morale at that time was the hardest when we were doing the best we can to maintain everything that nobody could use. Now that things are open back up, I feel like staff has gotten back into the swing of things and in our hard work and are working more efficiently and getting back into a routine. But it always helps to cook some burgers or get some pizza on a Friday whenever all your staff is working, to take some time and show your appreciation for all the work that they do. As far as spending time with family, we didn't really have any virtual capabilities throughout all of this, throughout the year, or work from home days, but I urge them all the time to spend time with their families. And most of them are still younger and live with their parents or have family in the area. My wife and I don't, but we've been fortunate enough to visit both our families at least once this year and plan to again over the holidays whenever things start to slow down.
Okay. Allison, what are you doing at University of Richmond?
Yep, kind of a little bit of what Chris said. You know, we're team building right now. We're on this Friday. I'm doing a thank you lunch for the guys, and we're actually doing a ropes course together. So just trying to talk to them on the personal level. Just let them know that we more than just work together. Like our landscape department, we're a big family together. You know, so we all care about each other. We're trying to be as proactive right now as possible. So anything that we can foresee that will help us in the future, we're trying to do that. And then also keeping staff, especially our athletic staff, keeping the athletic staff in the loop, letting them know that it's going to be a busy spring and be prepared. And then when we're getting the schedules and stuff, letting them know what to expect. I think that helps them plan and know what to expect instead of springing it on them. It's very easy. They don't use email as much as I do. So it's easy sometimes for us to just skip past keeping them in the loop. But we're really trying to keep our guys in the loop as to what's going on. And so personally, you know, we had the benefit of the university gave us, so from March 13th through June 15th, we had off basically working every other week. Now, I worked remotely every day, and because of my position, I can work remotely, and so I've gotten to take advantage of that a little bit. to be able to spend more time with family and stuff, which has been nice. Even just the commute, I have a 45-minute commute into work every day. I live way out in the country, so coming into the city every day, just taking that, working remotely and being able to do away with 2 45-minute commutes adds a lot of family time. So that's been really nice to be able to work remotely some too.
Okay. So do you catch yourself working more hours when you're doing a virtual day, or do you feel like you're working less hours?
Good question. It's kind of funny. I feel like it doesn't matter when I'm working remotely. I got to be on that email nonstop, because I feel I have a guilty conscience for some reason. I don't know why. That if I don't respond to emails, they're going to think I'm not working. When I work remotely, I think I work just as much as when I'm at work, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I've got a friend that he's gone virtual on everything, and he's up in Boston right now and normally works in Washington, D.C., works for the FDIC. And he said his staff, they're having to cut them off because they're working more hours from home. They can't disconnect. They can't disconnect from work.
And I mean, I've talked to multiple other people that have said that too, of having the problem of when you're at home all day, and when you come to work, you have that, okay, I'm driving home, I'm disconnecting from work. Whereas when you're working out of the house, it just continues. You're answering emails at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. Whereas when I leave work, majority of the time I leave work.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next question. And this is the last one that we've planned. So Allison, based on the COVID cases at your school, how is the university dealing with this, and what impact would it have on your budget?
Yep, so we have really strict social distancing guidelines. I'm in a conference room with closed doors. If you're inside, you have to wear a mask unless you're within an enclosed space. The university is really, really strict on it, but it's paying off. We have had total since the beginning of students coming back, and this includes the initial testing of students coming on campus. There's been 24 cases on campus total. So I think that's, 2 current cases. The university is doing really good. We're a smaller university, so we're able to do a lot of this social distancing. But the university has told us straight out, if we have to send students home, that they lose around $50 million a semester. $50 million a semester. What does that mean? That means massive cuts to our budgets, massive cuts to putting people on furlough, putting people having salary reductions. So we don't want to send the students home. And so everybody's taking it, I've got to say, even faculty and staff and students, everybody has taken it seriously, that if we want to stay here, we want students to be on an active campus, because that's what we're here for. So we have done everything that we're supposed to keep us actively with students on campus.
Okay. Chris, what are you seeing up in Stafford, and how is it impacting you guys?
So the population in Stafford is around over 150,000. And the last I checked, there were about 2,100 known coronavirus cases. Our county schools are still remote learning for the most part, with the exception of some younger kids in special need that are going to schools. They do plan on starting to get a certain percentage of kids starting back to the schools soon, but I'm not sure exactly when that's going to happen. I don't think they are either. And we have had a couple employees at our government center test positive for COVID, but I don't believe that anyone within the Parks and Recreation Department has tested positive. However, we have had several employees that have been instructed to quarantine from contact tracing measures that found they could have been at risk for potential exposure. As far as the budget, Stafford County has accepted over $200 million of CARES Act funding, which goes, all over the county in various departments. A lot of it went to our fire and rescue department and schools, but our Parks and Recreation Department was allocated some of that money, which helped to supply some equipment and supplemental items that related to the pandemic, like hand sanitizing stations for all the parks and signage we had made to encourage social distancing and frequent hand washing and use of face masks. Our fiscal year is July 1 through the end of June. We were originally anticipating a budget increase this past year, but it remained flat, and it looks like it's going to remain flat again for the next fiscal year. And obviously with no programs that ran in the spring and most of the summer, our revenue for Parks and Recreation was hurt drastically, but hopefully anticipating a better spring and our revenue numbers will bounce back.
So did I hear that right? $200 million?
I believe there were two different parts of the CARES Act that it was over $20 million.
Okay. All right. So Drew, what are you seeing at your high school?
Similar to what Chris just said, the CARES Act, a lot of that went to sanitation stations, upgrading stuff in the bathrooms. And then enough of it went to the facilities outside as well, if they're planning on coming back. Right now they have twice a week practices. They can come out, but they can't really do practice, but they still have to have hand sanitation nearby and whatnot. Plans drastically changed again because our budget is based off what the athletic director has for the fields and what he deems is important and what's not. He takes my advice based off of money, and again, with everything that we've lost, it was kind of shocking what we lost budget wise. But again, we want to make sure that the kids are safe and healthy, which again, with the CARES Act, a lot of that went into that. Right now we have, I can't tell you, we went way up. Prince William County was really bad, like Fairfax County, Northern Virginia, where the numbers we were getting, I think it was over 150 cases a day in the county. We've dropped down since the height of it, and Northern Virginia is still lingering lower than everyone else in the state. But with Prince William County, we're way more protective of the kids. There's been a lot less, I guess, knowledge of going back anytime soon. They are sending back, like Chris said, in Stafford neighbors, Prince William, for those that are curious. The first graders and kindergartners are going back November 6th, and that's when I'll be going back with just my capstone class, the senior level class. So a lot of that, again, we're kind of in limbo with plans and whatnot, because again, colleges for sure more than likely are going to be going back and playing in the spring. Even if VHSL approves the season, I don't know if Prince William will be playing. So again, it's definitely a difficult situation to be in as a turf grass manager and as a program manager, where you're trying to get these kids these opportunities to learn, and you don't know whether or not you're going to have the opportunity to teach them. So that's really what we've seen, the major impact on our situation at Brentsville. So
Okay. So I'm going to ask this of all of you guys, and this is something I was thinking of. I mean, do you see outdoor classrooms? I mean, I think a lot of the universities, probably University of Richmond, is going through that. Are you having to deal with that and make plans for outdoor classrooms?
Yes. We actually have 12 tent areas that are expanded for classroom space around campus. And we're currently, so it's great when it's warm outside. The challenge is when it gets cold outside. And I was actually just talking to our engineering services person, and he was pulling out his hair because they want to continue using these spaces until Thanksgiving, when students will be going home for through the holidays, and they want them to keep those tents warm. And you can put the heaters and stuff in them, but they're still not going to be as warm as a building. So we've actually had a lot of challenges with that, as far as with the fall leaf season. It doesn't matter it seems like even if we're across campus, they can still hear our leaf blowers. And we've been getting a lot of dings from faculty that we're making too much noise trying to get the leaves up. And so we just ordered some electric blower or backpack electric blowers from Steel, because they're so much quieter, so that we can at least do some blowing on campus. But yeah, we have 12 tented areas on campus that are being utilized as classroom space.
Okay. So are you responsible for sterilizing any of those areas? Do you have to fog them or do anything like that?
So landscape's not responsible for sterilizing them. We are responsible for about half of them. Housekeeping's really stepped up, and they're helping us a lot with the trash in the tents, because one specific tent is a food tent. It's right next to our dining hall, so it's basically an extension of the dining hall. And the trash that comes out of that, it's just continuous.
Wow.
So luckily, housekeeping has really been a great partner of ours. They're doing all the sanitizing. I mean, the changes that the housekeeping department has had to do to keep everything sterilized is amazing. I mean, they're wiping down tables in these food tent areas, in this food tent every 15 minutes. You know, they have people stationed there pretty much all day. So yeah, that's been a big thing as far as we have, you know, we're lucky in the respect that we're a smaller school, unlike Virginia Tech, where there's no way they could social distance 100% of their classes. They just have too many students. We came really close. So with adding these tents in, we're able to social distance all the classes.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we probably picked up a few pointers there if they do have any outdoor classrooms. Y'all currently don't have that, obviously, with no students in school.
We don't, and I don't believe, other than my classes, because we're always outside, I don't believe that they'll put kids outside. I don't think with a high school setting and the idea of security and whatnot, the thing that they're going to do to make sure that social distancing is possible is we're going to come in on a hybrid plan where we're going to be still virtual half the time and then in person half the time. So it'll split Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, Monday will be asynchronous. And they're going to put a little camera in the back of my room that's going to follow me around when I'm talking. I'm not particularly excited about that, but
All right. So we're going to open up the chat feature of our Zoom call here for any questions. If we have any questions out there, or if any of our panelists, including Dr. Goatley, would like to chime in, we're going to look for any questions, and I'm going to ask Whitney to unmute her phone and come into the call just to see questions that we have.
I guess everybody's done a really good job because there are no questions posted yet.
Okay.
Hey, John, I'm going to point this up here at the screen because these folks have told you everything that's in here, but sometimes it takes a source outside of what you all said, which I'm sitting here taking notes, and my notes say these people have employed planning, these people have employed communication, and one of their major points has consistently been providing safe athletic fields, which are all things that we being me, Dr. Askew, Dr. McCall, put together in a BTJ article that the intent was that you all would now take to your administration, to your coaches, to your players, because you're telling people this stuff, but sometimes they got to hear it from someone else. So we put that together. And if you haven't seen that, would like a copy of that, that might be something for these attendees that could use to get the word out that they're not kidding. This is going to be tough on these fields. Then please let me know so I can get you a copy of that, because that was our purpose, was to get that out there to hopefully take some pressure off of you all, because we titled it The Pending Storm, and you can see what's coming, and it will arrive sooner than we are planning for.
Well, and every one of these panelists have been intentional. I know Allison brought up some really good points about prioritizing and being intentional about things that you leave, and let your upper management know why you're leaving it that way, especially when you're understaffed. So I'm going to throw this out to everybody. We are all here to help the people on this call, as well as the people that will be viewing this later as we post it. So the contact information for every one of the panelists, including myself, are right here on this page, and we just want to thank our speakers for giving their time and efforts as far as planning for this, as well as sharing some of the ideas that they have. And like Dr. Goatley said, the Virginia Turf Crash the council produces a journal for everyone to read, and that's I'm assuming that's on the VTC website.
Yeah.
Link to that. But if you need more information, Dr. Goatley's contact information is here on this screen. You jot that down or just view this later. So